Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Jamie Nelson, one of the Summer of AI organizers and your host for today's session. Today's session is entitled AI Resistant or AI Enhanced Assignments, Practical Strategies for Faculty. Again, thank you for joining us for a candid discussion about the realities of creating AI resistant assignments versus the benefits of embracing AI enhanced. We'll go over all this. It gets kind of confusing. Learning. We'll explore techniques to make assignments harder for AI to complete while acknowledging those limitations. Then we'll discuss why AI enhanced assignments that teach responsible AI use may be more future-proof for student success as we go forward. So we'll talk about this. Our presenters today are Adam King, Senior Associate Director, Innovation and Transformation at Gies College of Business. And guess what? Me as well. Jamie Nelson, Associate Director, Educational Innovation, Gies College of Business, and I'm also here at CITL. If you have any questions throughout the event, for those in the room, feel free to put your hand up. If you're online, don't hesitate to put your questions in the Zoom chat window. A host will collect those, another host, Andrew, who's behind the scenes here, and he'll kind of pass that on to us and we'll be sure to get to you. We usually put a thumbs up in the chat just to acknowledge, hey, we got your question, and we'll get it to the right people. There'll be a survey at the end, which will give you a link to that. But otherwise, thank you for attending, and I hope you enjoy this session.
Yeah, awesome. Well, and to get us started here, I just want to point out that on the screen we do have a QR code, and we also have a link to the slides. So we recommend that you go ahead and pull up the slides. There'll be some links within the presentation that you can reference later. So a good resource for you. And we've got it on the next couple slides too. So first off, I want to thank CITL for hosting this Summer of AI series and for inviting us here today to present with you. So I'm actually going to switch sign here so I can see the monitor here. But yeah, so this is us here. We're very happy to be here. I'll go over the session objectives for us today. You're really, by the end of this session here, you should have a really good understanding of how AI has changed both assessment and academia. And not only there, but also the requirements within industry. So the skills that our students need, when they get into the professional roles around AI. And you'll be able to select from different assessment strategies as they pertain essentially to what you desire your students to use in terms of AI. And then we'll walk through how to create or transform your assessments into formats that either effectively resist or productively incorporate AI capabilities. So that's what we'll be covering today. And with that.
Yeah, so if we look through a little bit of the history of AI, and I'm not going past this is kind of commercial AI. 10 years ago, we of course had Siri kind of came on the scene, Alexa came on the scene, but those were chatbots that needed scripts. So if I ask this, it goes, looks at the scripts, and I'm not going to get into it too far, but it's very limiting. Then 2.5 years ago, when I remember when ChatGPT came on the scene, oh my goodness, this is very powerful. Students are going to cheat. They're going to use it to write reports. What do we do? And today, it's all over the place. All kinds of different tools for different things. This is just the tip of the iceberg. And the list goes on too. There's a website called there's an AI for that. And then it just lists tons of AI resources. And you can group and, I want an AI to do this and I want an AI to do that. And so that's there. So the point is, this has proliferated our existence. So AI aptitude takes a center stage on hiring. So I'll read this aloud in case you can't see it. 77% of leaders say that early in career talent will get greater responsibilities due to AI. So we're going to expect more from our employees. And so how are they going to keep up? They will probably use AI to keep up with all that stuff. 71% leaders are more likely to hire a less experienced person with AI skills than a more experienced one without those skills. The other day, I was talking to a colleague about how I thought what is the job market now? Can I go there and say, somebody, the employer asks me a question. I don't know how to answer that, but here's my workflow, and this is how I would get it done, even though I don't know what it is. I don't know, it's weird. And then 66% of leaders would not hire somebody without AI skills. So this is from Microsoft and LinkedIn's annual work trend report. So those of you who create assignments online or in house here, have you tried to answer your own assessments or your own questions with AI? I see a no.
I see a little bit of nodding too.
Yeah. And if you did, like, hey, let me see if AI can answer this, what happened? How well did AI do on those assignments? And I don't know if there's anybody online who wants to kind of chime in. There's somebody in the room.
It's a question about especially inspecting less read literature that is not in English. The answer usually is a disaster. Like they don't really, for example, I asked a question about Korean literature, a less read one in the 1960s. They don't read anything, like they just like make up things, which is a nightmare.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I mean, it's right, these large language models are a reflection of kind of what's available on the internet and most prevalent on the internet. So a lot of the training data is on English-based sources, right? So you're going to find some vacuums there for sure. Yeah, some gaps. Well, I think this is a really valuable thing to do. You know, try a couple of your assignments, some questions from your exams or whatnot. Try putting them into something like ChatGPT, and I think you'll be kind of amazed at what it's able to do. And this is sort of the first step of realizing, oh, might need to kind of change my strategy when it comes to assignments.
In terms of like say ancient history and ancient cultures, it gave correct responses. They weren't cited, nor do I necessarily want it to cite, but it wasn't very insightful, right? It didn't really challenge any assumptions or acknowledge that there were different viewpoints on these archaeological findings. It just sort of read stuff as fact. And it was, from certain scholars' point of view, correct.
And then, so now you're getting a sense for potentially what some of your students might be doing. They might be doing that same sort of thing and either getting an incomplete picture or response or more complete ones, or maybe they're able to, or they have access to something else or something, and then they have, maybe you're getting a different type of response, right? But then you're getting kind of more of this sort of picture into potentially what your students are doing and running into.
And I think some of these clues will help us determine, how can I do an AI assistant assignment or resistant assignment? Because it can't really answer this. It can't answer my personal feelings about this. We'll get into that.
Yeah. And I think, in that prior slide where we saw, we started with Siri, Alexa, I mean, look at how fast this is accelerating, right? I mean, the curve is just like, in terms of the proliferation of these tools and the capabilities. So where are we going to be a year from now, 5 years from now? Will those gaps be filled in terms of knowledge, or will it be able to give us more complete answers, etc.? I think probably yes.
We have an online question.
Yeah, online, Susan Curtis says that it's getting much better. And to use an AI licensed by the U of I if testing out exam questions, there's additional security, and the AI models are not supposed to train on the materials used within the Copilot space.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So using the university provided Copilot is a good idea there. And then with any AI tool that you're using, I definitely recommend checking your user settings there, under your account profile, and turn off training. So essentially, you would opt out of having your data being used to train the larger models and to be fed back to the larger training set for the models. That's always a good thing to turn off for these security and privacy reasons. Yeah.
So I listed what I thought, and Adam and I listed some of what we thought our fears were. Feel free to, talk about different things. My students aren't learning. They're losing their ability to think critically. And we had the recent MIT study that happened. I don't know if I'm 100% on board with that MIT study, but it's still worth looking at and thinking about. What's the campus policy on student AI use? There isn't one. We're still using the same yeah. Anyway, academic policy on cheating that we always have. So there isn't anything special, which kind of, and I'm going to answer, maybe Adam and I'll answer some of these just really briefly. So it's really up to, I'm just looking down here, it's really up to you as the instructor or the department or the college to say, this is what our procedures are. This is how we handle this. Because at least at this point, the campus doesn't have an arbitrary, an overarching. How do I know when, if or when, and how to use AI in a course? So this is kind of almost from, well, the student's perspective. If you haven't been clear in your syllabus, then you're leaving the door open. So that kind of means, well, I'm just going to write my paper with it. Nobody said anything, so I'm just going to go for it. So again, because I've throughout this, I've heard some faculty, well, I'm kind of waiting for guidance or whatever. The fact is that I want to give the faculty agency to go ahead and come up with their own policies on what you're doing with AI and what you expect of the students. How do I prevent cheating in an AI world, which is kind of what we'll dance around. If AI can do my assessments, how do I pivot? Which is, again, what we're going to talk about. What should I tell my students about the ethical, security, privacy implications of using AI? A lot of things to think about other than, I mean, we can use it and this kind of stuff, but there's so many other implications there. And how far do we go into it? I mean, again, that's up for you to decide. Meta's actually in an agreement, a 30-year agreement with the Clinton nuclear power plant, which is fairly close to here. And they're keeping it going. And I don't know if it's for AI. I suspect it is. But even locally, there's some sustainability issues and this kind of stuff. How do I know how students are using AI? Like, as in, how are they, using it? Are they just saying, write me a paper this and just cut and paste? Are they going back and forth because it's an assistant and they can reflect and they can come up with ideas and brainstorm? How do we determine that? Should we steer them in a certain direction on how to use AI? And then the last thing I kind of put in here is, how do I get help with AI? Okay, hey, it was cool. I attended Summer of AI, but now it's brass tacks and I want to kind of do something for my course. Is there any support on campus? And we don't have it all organized yet, but CITL, amongst others, amongst tech services, the library, some departments and colleges will have more support. This space in itself will actually be a place you can kind of come to or get help with things. So just throwing out there, keep your eyes out. More to come on that. Are we in an AI apocalypse? And this was generated with AI. This is actually clean AI. But what I want to get across here is just that I'm starting off apocalypsy, but then no, it's not an apocalypse. It's another new technology with various facets that we have to figure out together and try to move forward. I think that's it.
Yeah. Okay, so we've seen that AI is rapidly evolving, right? The capabilities are increasing. We've seen that in the job market, AI skills are being valued. Most new job descriptions these days mention AI skills. So the students graduating from Illinois are going to need to know how to use AI and to use AI well and to use AI responsibly. So that's one of the things that we should consider, I think, when we're looking at our courses, how we're designing our courses, when we're looking at the assignments within our courses as well. And so we're in sort of this post-AI world now, right? And we want to point out some frameworks here to guide you. And we're not going to go very deep into these frameworks here, but they're available in the slides. We recommend that you take a look at them and go a little bit deeper on your own. And then hopefully you'll find one that kind of fits with what you're trying to do within your course. So for the longest time, right, Bloom's taxonomy is something that we've used, right, when we're designing learning and looking at assessments and things. But really, AI has a far-reaching, right? It's able to do most things on this pyramid, from all the way down from remember to create. Now, whether it can do things entirely the way we would want it to, or get an A grade or something like that is up for debate. But it can do many of these things. And so, is Bloom still something we should look at? Is it still useful? Well, some universities have basically extended these frameworks or created new frameworks. And so one that's useful is from the Oregon State University, and they revisited Bloom's taxonomy. And the thing that's interesting here is that they've kind of split this up into two different columns. And in one column, they're looking at what are those human skills, what are those skills that are distinctively human, that humans could focus on and do. And then in the other column, how can Gen AI support that and supplement that learning and the skills that the humans are using. So an interesting thing for you all to look at. Another one, this is, we like this one because it's a little bit simpler, and it sort of imagines, okay, post AI, what does a taxonomy look like? And so it's nice, it's simple. You'll notice it doesn't even have the remember step on here, because if AI is at your fingertips and you can look up any subject at any point in time, well, remember as a stage is kind of limited, right, in terms of usefulness. So here they're really reframing those fears that we had as opportunities. And then lastly, this is the AI assessment scale. And this is useful in that you can look at this and sort of think, okay, for my course or for my assignment, how do I want to set those expectations with my students? Am I okay? Do I want them to not use AI at all for an assignment? Do I want them to collaborate with AI? And then it'll give you sort of pointers and language that you can use on your assignment page or in your syllabus. So it's a nice framework. And then lastly, we have a framework from a Geese professor, Vishal Safdeb, and he has a great video actually that I think CITL produced. It's available at this link here. And he walks students through this ADAPT framework of how they should be thinking about AI when they're approaching their coursework. But we think this framework is actually really useful for faculty as well, and for learning designers. So it'll walk you through sort of using AI to amplify, disclose, align, probe, and think. And then we've kind of put these questions here to help guide you as you're thinking about your assessment strategy. So in terms of amplify, what can AI enhance for deeper engagement? How should my students acknowledge usage? Have I aligned to norms and standards? Have I set expectations? Are students checking AI for bias and inaccuracies? Because we know AI gets things wrong sometimes, maybe even oftentimes. And then it can have an incomplete picture, or it can have biases built in. So are my students aware of that? Do they know how to check for that? Am I fostering deeper thinking and exploration by encouraging my students to use AI? So
Yeah, so how will you adapt your teaching and assessment strategy? So let's go into this a little bit.
yeah.
Oh, that's right, sorry.
And we think that really, as you're thinking about this, adapting your teaching and assessment strategy, this shouldn't necessarily be in a vacuum, right? You should be looking at your learning objectives, the skills that you want your learners to develop, the capabilities of AI, right? What can AI do? And this is changing, right, rapidly. What is going to be needed in the job market and industry in terms of these skills? And then the ethical implications too. What should we be using AI for? What should we not be using AI for?
So there's a variety of assessment strategies here, and we'll discuss each of these in turn. AI proof, a traditional approach, AI resistant, adaptive approach, and AI enhanced collaborative approach. And so what we'll do is, when would you apply each approach and why? That's rhetorical because we'll know it. Okay, so AI proof assignments, here's the definition, designed to make it nearly impossible for students to use AI tools like ChatGPT or whatever, Copilot, to complete the task. Sometimes it's hard to make it, but that's why we have nearly impossible. So here's where examples are, and it's interesting to have the discussion. Do we want to go back to this? But maybe in some cases it makes sense. Anyway, In-class handwritten assignments, oral assignments. I'm gonna ask you something and you're gonna, tell me about it. Computer-based testing-based exams. You report to a facility and there's, people checking to make sure you're not cheating or have your phone, a ChatGPT on the side. Live coding or problem-solving sessions. Assignments requiring personal experience or real-time observation because the AI isn't, at least as of yet, sitting in your house, keep an eye on you and know everything about you. So that kind of stuff works well. And the goal here is to ensure that the work is entirely student-generated and verifiable. So I, in a cave or out in the woods, can perform this task. I'm good at that, and I can do it without any tools or anything else like that. But of course, all of these require more resources and time for administration. So if you have some huge class, this is hard to do. Or if you have an online class, well, you're not going to have everybody fly in for computer-based testing.
And we put proof in quotation marks here because really, we get this question a lot, right? Faculty come to us saying, how do I AI proof my assignments? And the reality of it is the situations or the ways you can do this are pretty limited, right? I mean, in class, handwritten, no devices, oral assignments, or going to a testing center. That's basically, the reality of if you don't want your students to use AI at all, that's what you're looking at. So we want to be completely blunt, and honest with you here, but that's the reality.
And this is for fundamental core building block skills. So some examples here are my doctor needs to know these definitions or can identify these things. They have board exams, certifications, licenses. Oh, there's the clinical competency demonstrations and real-time problem solving under pressure. So there's certain things that we're not going to have AI do for us.
And this isn't an exhaustive list. There are other examples, and I'm sure that you have some instances, in your courses and things where you would want to make something as AI proof as possible. Next on the spectrum is AI resistant assignments. And so here you're looking at structuring assignments to essentially reduce the usefulness or the effectiveness of AI generated responses. So it's not that you're completely banning AI, but maybe you're making it less attractive for your students to use AI. Or even if they are using AI, they're still getting enough out of it and getting learning out of it that it doesn't really matter as much to you whether they're using AI and whether you're having to strongly police that or not. So some examples, of things that kind of work well here. But again, this is not an exhaustive list, but assignments that kind of require very specific knowledge. So obscure knowledge or very local knowledge or things like that. So we had mentioned earlier the Korean writing and stuff and how that's not very much, that doesn't exist too much in the LLM. So that would be an example of something that's kind of inherently resistant to AI. Tasks that involve iterative feedback or revisions and input from the instructor. So they've been broken down into these smaller chunks and milestones. Or prompts that ask for reflection on something that happened in class or a peer interaction or something like that. That's going to be harder to do. AI.
And I would almost like turn the pay or look at a different facet of this. A lot of this stuff is also more engaging for the student as well. Yes, we have a side product of, AI can't do it because it's personal and I'm reflecting, or it's about my local pizza parlor and I want to keep them going and what's their marketing plan or whatever. So it's not just AI resistant, it's maybe smarter assignments and that kind of stuff. And this, I just wanted to add on the iterative feedback. That's so we don't say, hey, the paper's due at the end of the semester, it's worth half your grade. Well, the students aren't going to do it. They're going to wait till the end and they're in a time crunch and they'll probably use AI. So iterative means, hey, we're going to start out with the intro. Okay, hand that in or get feedback and stuff like that. So people aren't as tempted to then engage with AI in the wrong way.
Yeah. And again, the goal, right, is to make it harder for AI to produce relevant or acceptable answers without the student engaging. And really, this is useful, especially in larger classes or online environments. where you don't necessarily have access to bringing the students in for computer-based testing or doing in-class written assignments. This is kind of the strategy that you can employ there. And so you might be thinking, well, what about proctoring and detection, right? AI detection. We've intentionally not listed these in the AI proof category. We're instead listing these here under AI resistant because there's some limitations, and we'll kind of talk through those here. So in terms of proctoring, the university has access to ProctorU. I think it's free for undergraduate students, but there's a cost if you want to use it for grad students. It will add complexity to your courses and your workflows, right? Some students will run into some technical problems and limitations. And one of the things you'll have to remember is that after the exams, you'll get many flagged events that you have to review, right? Because it's basically, it doesn't know what is an infraction or not, but it's going to flag all of those things. Then as an instructor, you'll have to go in and review oftentimes hundreds of flags, and that takes time. Now, in terms of AI detection, the university doesn't have any contract that I know of with any AI detection platforms. There are some issues with this in that there are reports of false positives. And even the tools that claim to be best in class, will still tell you that, even if they get one false positive, they're not comfortable with that. So they position their tools as a way to have a conversation with their students about what your student is doing, how did they write this, etc. But it's difficult to prove without a shadow of a doubt that someone has used one of these AI tools. And there's some things also that when you're talking to these AI detection companies, they'll tell you that they'll never be able to detect if a student used AI to brainstorm or to generate an outline, and then wrote their own paper based off of that. That'll never be detectable. However, some things that may seem innocuous, like using Grammarly to go through and help you edit your paper, that can be detected. And sometimes will show us like this paper is 100% AI written. So there's some potential things to keep in mind if you are using this technology, and you'll want to kind of know how you're going to react to these things if they come up, what conversations you're going to have with your students, etc. Now, there are also a new class of products called content authoring process tools, where you tell your students you have to author your paper in this specific platform. And then the platform will take a look at your keystrokes and do some heuristics and around your keystroke pattern and things like that. So it can tell if someone else is writing, for instance. It can tell if you paste in a large block of text, for instance. But again, you'll have to kind of deal with those issues as an instructor. Okay, well, what happens if I'm using this tool and then all of a sudden a student pastes in a large block of text? I then going to have a conversation with that student. Where did you get this text? And then what are they going to say? Were they authoring it in Word or something like that? So there's a lot of conversations that might get a little bit sticky, and messy, that you'll have to think about. So these can all be defeated to some degree, right? Students are clever. If you go on Reddit, there's all sorts of tips and things for defeating some of these things. They do have a deterrence value, though. So we wanted to mention that. But that's why we've put this in the AI resistant category. And we'd like you to think about that student-faculty relationship as well. So, are you creating an adversarial relationship with your students? Are you going to spend a lot of your time policing and catching the students, etc.? Because it really does take a lot of time. If you're going to be running papers through these AI detection platforms and stuff, it is very time consuming. Or another approach would be to build trust with your students. And that's maybe an approach to consider. And one of the ways to do that, and Jamie touched on this a little bit, is there's some design choices that you can make within your courses to de-incentivize cheating. There's lots of research out there on this. We recommend you dive into the research. It's really fascinating. But students are much less likely to cheat. For instance, if assignments are worth less than 20% of the grade, if you're communicating the importance and the relevance of that assignment to the students. So, as a student, you might be doing an English writing assignment, you're like, okay, how is this going to help me? Why am I doing this assignment? But as an instructor, you can communicate that, hey, you're gaining valuable skills as you're doing this assignment, and they're transferable to when you get out into the workplace. And so making that connection, and also speaking to them about why you don't want them to use AI, or they're not allowed to use AI, or they're allowed to use AI in these ways on the assignment. And then also scaffolding those assignments to reduce this deadline pressures. Because when you talk to students about why they got into hot water, it's usually to take a shortcut because it was worth a really high percentage of the grade. They got into some trouble with deadlines, and they just they needed a shortcut basically. So some things to keep in mind.
So AI enhanced assignments. So we want to be, we wanted to be transparent and say, hey, here are levels of dealing with AI or not dealing with AI. I personally am kind of leaning towards this. So let's learn about it a little bit. AI enhanced assignments intentionally incorporate AI tools in the learning process to develop digital literacy, AI skills, and critical thinking. Now you have to do that, thoughtfully. Obviously, it's not just otherwise people will just, hey, give me the answer and this kind of stuff. So some examples, compare and critique AI generated responses. Sometimes you could do that in class and have, people volunteer to critique, or they could do it individually or in groups. Use AI to brainstorm ideas and then refine and expand them independently. I use it a fair amount for brainstorming, me sitting there brainstorming, if I'm lucky, I'll get 10 ideas, but then throw it in here, give me 20 ideas. Okay, I like this, give me 20 more like that. And you can all of a sudden exponentially kind of increase the amount of ideas that you get. And you're sorting through. It's not just a dumb, okay, there's my idea. You're sorting through, you're deciding what makes sense. Ask students to document their AI use and reflect on its limitations. So I was at an AI conference recently, and this was one of the themes. Hey, I'm going to give, there was some talk of, okay, we're going to break it down kind of the grading process into great job, you kind of did it, it's okay, and then you didn't even, meet the thing or whatever. But then the big deal is share your work with me. Now, and I don't know if we discuss this exactly later, but there's a feature in ChatGPT where you can just download your log and send it along. But then the question is, how the heck do I grade that process? But I think we're going to be looking at more process than the end product, because I think the end product will be at a certain level in general. But how did they get there? So I think that'll be a thing that we'll be dealing with. So the goal is to teach students to use AI ethically and effectively as a learning aid. So that's what we're trying to do. Don't just put the question in, get an answer and paste it somewhere else. How can you use it to actually increase your brain activity and work through challenges with greater efficiency? Limitations, of course, ensuring that learning is taking place and having enough resources to grade more advanced submissions, which is kind of what I said a second ago. And then we do have some resources here, some links. So you'll get the PDF of this, so you can click on these things. But we have some best practices, learners, expectation and assignment examples. Where was that from again? Do you remember?
That's the Solutions Hub.
Oh yeah, okay. I knew it was from campus here. Yep. So anyway, that group got together and kind of came up with some things that are useful. And then there's we got a spell check there. Anyway, Illinois Library Guide documenting, and it might be me, I'll take responsibility. UCF Teaching Repository. So they're trying, UCF, University of Central Florida, is trying to have a repository of AI assignments, shareable AI assignments with curriculum involved. So that's worth a peek. It's not super huge right this second, but there's probably 10, 15 assignments there. And then you explain it.
Yeah, so there's a professor, his name is Chris Ostro at CU Boulder, and he has shared his AI use disclosure agreement. And so essentially, he asks his students, whenever they're handing in an assignment, to fill out this disclosure form. The disclosure form has questions about how they used AI and it guides them on how to document it. And the thing that's nice there is he makes basically an agreement with the students that, hey, as long as you're documenting and telling me how you're using AI, you're not going to get in trouble with me. You're not going to have an academic integrity violation for using AI. Now, I may look at that and I may determine, actually, you kind of went a little bit too far with AI, or you used it in a way that, I wouldn't have wanted you to use AI here. So, but we'll have a conversation about that, and you'll have an opportunity to redo the assignment or do an alternative assignment. So that's an example of sort of this, taking what could be a very adversarial relationship with the students and then turning it into more of a trust-based one where, hey, I trust you, disclose how you're using AI. We have this informal agreement together, and if there's an issue, we'll talk about it. So I wanted to point that out as something to check out. So, all right, so we've laid a lot of groundwork here, and you might be feeling like, oh my gosh, I've got 10, 20 assignments in my course. Maybe AI can do a lot of them or a lot of portions of it. What do? I have to redesign all of these assignments. I have to change my strategy. I'm teaching here in a month, starting in the fall. What do I do? Well, we're going to show you a technique that I think will be very interesting for you and hopefully eye-opening of how you can get started and how you can do some of this stuff pretty quickly. Now, of course, some things that you can do, right? You can talk to other faculty members and ask them, what did you do to your assignments? How are you dealing with this? Definitely highly recommended. You can also work with an instructional designer or a learning designer here at CITL or through your department, and they'll be definitely available to have those consultations with you, those conversations with you. Would highly recommend that as well. But there's another option that you can use too. And that is to actually work with AI to transform your assignments. So we're going to walk through a scenario of what that might look like. So here we've got a case. So this is a business case in a typical college business course. And essentially the students are reading the business case. It's about a manufacturer. They're struggling to compete. They're facing economic uncertainty. And then the students are put in this situation where they have to make a difficult decision, right? Do they close the plant and move it offshore, or do they invest in new technology that'll keep the plant open, but it might reduce headcount? So a lot of decisions here for them to make. And typically, you would want the students to read through the case, and then you want them to come prepared to class so you can have a discussion in class, right? That's the typical sort of scenario of how you would use an assignment like this. And so how would you ensure that your students are prepared and have read through the case before coming to class? Well, typically you do like a knowledge check quiz, be a multiple choice quiz, right? So how long has Horizon Manufacturing been operating in the automotive industry? How has the profit margin changed? How many jobs will be eliminated, etc. So you could ask these questions in a quiz. It's in Canvas. You don't have to spend any time grading it. Is this assignment vulnerable to AI? I would say yes, very, very vulnerable. Because if this is a well-known case, then AI already knows about it. They can just put the questions in AI and then get the answers. Or they can put the text of the case into AI, and AI can scan the case and give them the answers. Or even without using AI, they can just scan the case and not really read it, and then, okay, I think this is that, and whatever. And then does it accomplish your goals, right? If your students are going to be taking a shortcut here, potentially, are they then ready in class to have the fruitful discussion to get that learning, that deeper learning? If they've just taken a shortcut here, probably not. So we would say that this assignment is ripe for re-envisioning, reimagining, if you will. So let's improve it. And let's take this mindset of AI resistance. Okay, so we're not, if they use AI, okay, whatever. That's okay. They're still we're gonna use some techniques here to make sure that they still get some value out of it, some learning out of it. So here we're using Copilot, and we've put in a prompt. At the bottom of the screen, we've got a prompt framework that you can use, and there's lots of these available online. But essentially, it's sort of the cheat sheet to a good prompt, right? You put in a task, an example, context, format, persona, and tone. And we've done a lot of those in this prompt, but it could certainly be made better. And we can talk about that later on, but this will get you started. So I worry that students will quickly hunt through the case for the answers, or just use a chatbot to answer this multiple choice quiz. So you're setting some context here. Provide me with 3 replacement assignment options that are AI resistant. Okay, so then you're asking for what you want. That's the task, right? And you could even give more examples about what you mean by AI resistant. But then we're gonna get a little bit more concrete. They should be not too time consuming for my students to complete. 15 minutes max, not including reading time. So I don't want my students to spend a whole lot of time doing this assignment, right? I really want them to read the case. I want it to be more authentic and relevant to the student. I want it to be easy for me to grade. I don't necessarily want to increase my workload as a professor all that much. And I want to accomplish my goal, which is for my students to thoughtfully read the case and be prepared to discuss and take a deeper dive in class. This is an undergraduate business strategy course with 60 students, and I could give more context too of how this is going to be used. So let's take a look at some of these alternative assignments that it's kind of brainstormed for me. So option 1 would be a stakeholder decision brief, where they're choosing a stakeholder from the case, and then they're writing the 3 key concerns that that stakeholder has, 2 specific actions that they would recommend, and then a question that they would want answered before proceeding. So you're asking the students to really put themselves in the shoes of that stakeholder. And so this group encourages empathy, right, and multiple viewpoints, which is interesting when compared to a multiple choice quiz that we had before. It'll still be pretty easy to grade. Essentially, you can just scan for completeness. And it starts to prepare the students for kind of more engaging discussion in class. I do agree it is more difficult to complete without actually reading the case. However, I do think that AI could still probably do a fairly good job if it knows about the case. However, the student is going to have to interact with the AI. It's maybe going to have to specify which stakeholder, they're going to have to review this, etc. And so they're doing more of those stages of trying to understand the material and the output that they're getting from the chatbot, right? And then they're encouraged to be prepared and have read. Let's take a look at another alternative. A personal connection reflection. So summarize the central dilemma in 1 sentence. Identify 2 aspects that connect to your personal experience, career goals, or something you've observed in the business world. And then pose 1 specific question about the case that you're generally curious about discussing in class. So here you're asking the students to make these connections to their own personal context and lives. And that's harder to do with AI. And that contextualization helps create connections for them, but then also encourages them to have gone through and do the effort of reading through the case. Still very easy to grade. And then again, you're setting up the students to contribute in class because they've thought about this question that they're genuinely curious about. The third alternative, this is kind of nice because it's a different format and you're asking them to fill out this decision matrix. So you've got some implementation options, and then they're going to essentially put in the potential benefits and risks and their recommendation for each of these strategies. And again, it's a different format. It's going to be harder to copy and paste potentially. You're asking them to start making decisions and use their decision-making skills. And then they're definitely having to put more effort into this. And the real power in these assignments comes also with how you're connecting it to the rest of the class. So in your assignment instructions, you can be alluding to the fact that, hey, you're doing this. This is why I'm having you do this. I want to make sure you've read the case. We're going to have a discussion in class. And then it's, okay, maybe in some contexts you'd be cold calling on the students or something like that. And sometimes that encourages them. But you can actually set this up so that you could be doing a debate in class, or you could be pairing the students up together, taking different viewpoints, etc. So if you explain that context to the students and then also connect to, hey, this is going to be about making decisions. You need to make decisions all the time here at university. and also after you graduate. This is why it's important for you to be building these skills. That makes for a much more compelling sort of reason for the students to go through and have done this work here. So that was a AI resistant assignment. Now let's take a look at maybe an AI enhanced assignment example. So typically something that you might do in a course like this would be, okay, we've talked about the case. Now we're going to do a reflection essay. I want my students to kind of summarize what they've learned, etc., and cover these questions here. So kind of a typical thing. So let's go ahead and work with AI to enhance the assignment. And we're going to take an approach of, I want my students to use AI. I'm going to encourage them to use AI in working with this. So here's the prompt. After my students discuss the case in class, I traditionally have them write a reflection essay and submit it 2 days later in Canvas. It's worth 5% of the grade. Instead, I'd like them to use AI tools to create a deliverable. I want to give them a few more days to complete the assignment and keep the grade percentage the same. And all this, of course, is changeable and customizable. Give me 2 options for assignments that are AI enhanced. My primary goals are for the students to be able to apply these decision-making skills to other contexts. Secondary goals are to help them learn ethical and responsible AI skills. I want them to document how they used AI, and I'm open to them fully using it, or whatever it is. Maybe you're not open to it fully, but you want them to use it in these specific ways, and you could list those out here. So let's take a look at the 2 examples. This is an example of an executive decision package, where essentially the students are creating this whole suite of documents that go together: an executive summary, an implementation timeline with a visualization, a stakeholder impact analysis, a risk mitigation strategy, and then an outline of a communication plan. So basically, they're going to be collaborating with the AI to generate these things in a cohesive way. And the thing that's powerful about this, think about what we were asking them to do before, a reflection essay. This is a much more involved thing, a lot more different parts to it. In a typical context, it might take them the whole span of your course to create something like this, right? But with using AI as a partner, they could complete this in a weekend, right? And this is something that is much more valuable to them in terms of developing skills. They could even put this in their portfolio. They could talk about it when they're interviewing potential employers about how they created this whole suite and package of things. So a much more compelling assignment for the students. Let's look at the next one. They could create a communication portfolio for stakeholders. So it could be an employee town hall presentation, so the slides for that, a letter to the union representatives, press release for the community, an investor briefing document, or an implementation guide for management. So again, something that is potentially much more impactful for them. And here's some things about, some details about how you would implement these, some things to keep in mind, or why these work. And the thing that's very important is to provide clear guidelines to your students. How do you want them to use AI? What can they do? What can they not do? You can require process documentation as well, or have them fill out that AI disclosure document or something similar. You'll want to make sure that you are establishing your evaluation criteria so that you're evaluating things differently now too, right? You might be evaluating more of the process instead of the end product. And you probably should expect your students to deliver a much higher quality level of work too, right? Maybe your standards have increased as a result. And then consider some other things. Here we list peer review. There's ways that you can take an assignment like this and even extend it beyond just something that they hand in. It could be a competition, could be they're doing presentations in class, could be they're voting on each other's papers, could be that they're doing peer review, so they're meeting with someone in class, getting suggestions for improvement, making revisions, and then incorporating those in there. So a lot of things that you can do if you use sort of an AI enhanced kind of mindset. And none of these examples are perfect, but the key here is that you're using AI kind of as a partner, a brainstorming partner, and you can push back and you can iterate, say, I like this, I don't like this, and I don't think this is going to work because of this, etc. And so that back and forth is really useful. And we would even recommend that as a good thing for you all to internalize, because it will feed into potentially how you could model that behavior for your students in terms of that, how to use AI in an effective manner, responsible manner, and ethical manner for when they get out into the workplace, or when they're tackling other courses.
So now what? Basically, kind of our bottom line here is let's let AI help us and let's relax a little bit. That was relaxing. Anyway, okay. So try it out on your own assignments. So approach your interactions with AI as human plus you. It's your consultant, it's your friend, it's not like if we went to a tutor, we're a partnership and they're helping us. I would consider it that way. It's not your tutor doesn't do your homework for you. So it's that kind of thing there. And we need to be there right this second to evaluate the responses and stuff. You as a person, do not be afraid to experiment with AI. I mean, you have to spend time. I remember in Prostamic's workshop, you have to spend time with AI to be able to learn it. So type in, try some stuff, evaluate your questions. If you have a question, type it in and see what the response is. Okay. So be specific, needs, likes, dislikes, examples, inspiration, ask questions.
And don't be afraid to ask questions, right? Like using AI it's a totally safe space, right? You can ask any question that you want to the AI. And that's why some of the students really like using it, right? And you should take that approach too.
Yeah. You can ask it questions. You can push back. That's not where I'm going. Here's what I would like instead. So iterate. Keep an open mind. Like, so sometimes I'll engage with AI and I'm kind of disappointed and I might be like, forget it, I'll do it myself or whatever. And maybe you do reach that point, but try a different prompt. Try to maneuver it in the right place. And you can adjust the difficulty level. So to kind of summarize, what's the next step for everybody? Step-by-step guide to get started. Try answering your current assessments with AI to see where you stand. Okay, so at least there's no harm in it. Maybe we can hide our head in the sand or whatever, but hey, throw it in there. Let's see where you are. That's okay. Revisit your learning objectives. So we might need to this might be the chance to kind of redevelop the course. Like, okay, AI can do every single assessment I have. I'm making stuff up. So maybe I need to reassess what's really important with my students walking away from this course. What do they really need to know?
And AI can help you with that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yeah, good point. Ask it. Hey, I'm teaching this, I'm teaching that. What are some reasonable objectives? And again, you go in there and decide, oh, no, that's okay, but I like this and that. And even provide more information about some things. Decide your assignment mix. You certainly don't have to stick with any one of these. You don't have to, I'm not, no AI. Hopefully not, people aren't doing that. Because I think it's the age of AI. But what's your mix of assignments? And just make sure it's clear for the students. This assignment, anything goes. I'm making stuff up. This assignment, no, I prefer you to reflect. This is why I want you to do it and whatever. And then work with AI to brainstorm changes to your assignments. As Adam mentioned, AI can help you with all of this. I mean, now that you saw it, like, how do I make this? Here's my assignment. How do I make this more resistant? AI resistant, or what's an alternative? I mean, we've shown things that, but now it's your turn, and just use AI to do that stuff. Keep an eye on it. I mean, don't just let it go through and you don't be the student and grab it and paste it in for the students. And there's been some issues with if be transparent too with your use of AI. So, let the students know kind of, hey, I do some assignments with AI. I don't know what maybe the right admission of that is, but there's been a lawsuit where I was a professor and they did not allow AI in their course, and yet they used AI to create stuff. If I'm getting that right. Oh.
And the student wanted a reimbursement of their tuition.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't at Illinois.
No, yeah. Oh, okay. So other things to try, and this is we're almost done here. Reference one of the frameworks when prompting. So you could look at any of the Bloom stuff, the post Blooms and all that kind of stuff. And as you're prompting, kind of see where your assignments fit. That's where we're going with that. Input all your learning objectives. So you can also do this as a whole. It's not because, of course, you could just put that one assignment in there, but you might want to give the AI more information about your entire course so it knows what to cover and kind of provides more of a framework for those things. So that's what that's about. Making connections across assignments. Okay, that's kind of similar-ish there. You can break down if it sees all your assignments, it can kind of help you determine, oh, this goes here, this goes there. Here's what I would test on at these various mile markers or whatever. Ask how to evaluate process and critical thinking. So we kind of were like, hey, maybe evaluating process is more important. I don't have an answer to that right off the top of my head, but AI can certainly help you walk through that. You can build rubrics and grading guidelines, build complete instruction sets, and give sample submissions. So if you need examples, here's what I'm asking for. Hey, student, this is what I'm looking for. Is there something else?
Yeah, no, and then you can look at those sample submissions that it generates and you can see, is this what I had in mind? You know, is this, or am I off the mark here, or do I need to do more work on these assignments? Right.
So thank you. And then we do have a evaluation.
So yeah, we do have a survey here for you to complete, and that will give us some great feedback on the session, things to improve for you know, if we do this again, and good feedback for CITL and the whole event series. So thank you very much.
We don't have much time. Anything
we have time for
online?
questions.
Final closing questions? No.
Oh, there's a question.
Okay.
From Bertha Latin, thank you. Can you clarify what you meant by adjust the difficulty level when working with AI? Are you referring to the difficulty level of the assignments it suggests?
Yeah, the difficulty level of the assignment. So that's one of the things that's really easy to do with AI. You know, if you're specific about the level of the course, the level of your students, you can even put in things like the expectations that you have for your students if there were prereqs that they needed to go to have done before getting to your course, or things that they've already covered in your course. The more details you can put in like that, the better. And then that can help you adjust the difficulty level. And you can also say things like, that's a little bit too hard, too difficult, make it a little bit easier or less time consuming for the student.
You beat me by asking.
No.
Is there any value in having students turn in their interactions with AI?
Yeah, absolutely. That can be part of that process documentation that you ask the students. So it could be a link to their ChatGPT conversation, for instance, or copy paste. And then the challenge there is like, what do you do with it? You know, as a faculty member, how much time are you going to spend looking at that? Are you going to be grading that? How are you going to be grading that? So those are some things that I think are still folks are still feeling out, you know, how to do that. But yeah.
When I read the session description, you know, it was advertised as assignments, right? Being the noun, the thing produced. And you definitely delivered on that. But you also kind of sold yourself short a little bit in that title because you talked about assessment and evaluation.
Yeah.
There's a hint at formative and summative evaluation in there, right? And so the conversation and the sharing, and I heard doing assignments in stages. So, you know, I'm not saying change the title, but when I heard assignment, I'm like, oh, resist assignments, that means stopping cheating, which was the first slide you had, but then you delve into some other things. So no, it was good. I think you know, and also course samples to show potential employers. Is that not a form of evaluation when the committee's looking at a student? They are assessing, evaluating the student's learning, the potential employees learning. So yes, the assessment doesn't stop at college, right?
It's almost
Right.
the ultimate evaluation.
Yes, I think so. So this was a refreshing, when I looked at the title, I expected like, okay, anti-cheating, which that's part of it,
A little bit,
but
yeah.
you did way more, so.
Well, and maybe this is a place to start, right? Is with one assignment, you know, like this might seem overwhelming, but just start with one assignment and then build off of that. and put your syllabus, everything you're teaching, etc., and take a look at those critical thinking and all those.
And then the other side of this too is, speaking of evaluation, is faculty use of AI to give feedback to students, which is beyond the scope maybe of this presentation, but that would be another conversation presentation I'd like to see, is the potentials and pitfalls of that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we go through a lot of experimentation. Michelle.
Yeah, I had a comment. I'm gonna put my faculty hat
Okay.
for that comment. So what I'm hearing from you guys is that we can do a lot of really fun stuff with AI. But it requires for me to work on learning about the tools, learning about how to use the tools in a way that requires me to spend a certain amount of time
Mhm.
to get to the results that, would be acceptable for sharing with my students. And what I'm hearing from my faculty line is more work. What can the EdTech community and center like our center do to actually facilitate through agentic AI or whatever? I mean, are we reaching a time when the EdTech community should really think about getting together to put together protocols or ways to really help faculty who really want to do what you suggest to do, which is to some extent what faculty development have been, saying for the last several decades, stop doing multiple choice questions. I mean, AI can generate, endless questions like that, right?
But it can
is
answer it too.
useful? No.
Yeah.
So, but we have been re-advocating that faculty should stop, doing multiple choice questions to depart towards a more elaborate set of questions, which is now made possible by. I was hearing what faculty development have been saying, but at the same time, you're not telling me it's going to be less work for me. So one of the big challenges that we have been always facing as faculty developer is we are asking faculty to do more work. And sometimes a lot of work to change the assignment, right? Or the nature of the assignment. How can we ourselves leverage AI to actually offer to faculty instructors AI solutions that do not require necessarily a huge amount of work on their part? Or are we thinking about moving towards that kind of solutions?
Yeah, a couple of things that I think about is one, we could do custom GPTs that are, hey, these are questions for AI that everybody has, and let me just run my stuff through it. It automatically does it, and there it is. I think maybe that could help, especially if you're in certain departments and that kind of stuff. I did want to make a statement. I did want to make a statement about, of course, we talked about best practices and showed blooms and all this kind of stuff. That's the best practice. Of course, you can just jump into Chat GPT and give me an assignment and this, and here's my paper that I already had. So you could make it easier than what we're saying, but I totally get you with trying to make it easier for faculty to move forward.
And I think that there are some platforms, some products out there that are coming out that will help with this. So Jamie and I are going to be attending a demo here shortly of a course design platform that speeds up the design process and helps faculty think about their assignments and their objectives and all that stuff. So there's some things like that coming along. I think that, I want to push back a little bit on the assertion that this is going to be a lot more work. I think it's a give and take. I think there are going to be some things that are actually going to be a lot faster to do with AI. So for instance, writing a case, or, you can do that with AI pretty quickly. And coming up with these assignment ideas and things like that, and writing these instructions and fully fleshing out the assignments, that can be much faster with AI. However, you have to have those fundamental AI skills, and I think that that's something that, if you're asking your students to use AI, but potentially, you haven't used AI all that much, or you don't feel comfortable using AI, that's going to be really probably hard, right? That's kind of a cognitive disconnect there, and I think a roadblock, and that's why I hope that the university puts in resources, not just to maybe have AI courses for the students, like how to use AI and get upskilled, but also for the faculty too.
Absolutely.
And these like workshop series like you're doing now, the Summer of AI and all that, those will be I think, great and a really a good way to upskill the faculty so that they feel confident and equipped to do this stuff. And yeah, there may be some things that are, you know, a lot more work but you know, when the internet came around, did the faculty at that point need to rethink their assignments because students could Google and all this stuff? Probably, and I think this is another example of that, and there'll probably be another technology 20, 30 years from now that'll do the same thing. So there's kind of a cycle to this too.
Sure.
And writing good,
Yeah.
good quality, multiple choice questions is actually a difficult thing and a time consuming thing if you do it right. Without an item analysis.
That's
Sure,
Yeah.
that's right.
and you know, you can ask the AI for, is there any ambiguity in this question, right? Things like that sometimes you might not see, right? As a faculty member that's sort of in this all the time. So there's some big advantages. So some time savings, true. But then those multiple choice questions can be answered by AI very easily. But if you're doing it in class, well, okay, then you don't have a problem.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.